Hello, welcome to this YouTube webinar on organisation, memory and note-taking. My name is Wynne McCormick. It is one in a series of 9 webinars on dyslexia at second level. I recommend to everybody, be they teachers or parents, to take the webinar on how dyslexia affects the student at second level first. It gives an understanding of the challenges facing the student at this level, and then take the other webinars that might be of interest to them. Much of the content of this webinar comes from the work I did on the Study Skills Workshop for students with dyslexia in senior cycle for many years. Over those years, I found out what works for the students and the strategies they really appreciated. As always, any links mentioned will be below the YouTube page. I am starting with organisation and time management. As I start, I want to emphasise that many of the strategies I'll be talking about are not just for second level. When a student with dyslexia finds something that works for them and reduces the confusion and allows them to have tangible rewards for the time they put in, these strategies become life skills that will help them in further education and in the workplace. The first dimension is having a realistic homework routine. Realistic in that it should take into account whatever activities they are doing outside school. It should be at a regular time and a regular place with all the equipment close by. An agreement could be made that mobile phones are turned off. Here is a possible timetable for a junior cert student. It's at the same time most days, but on a Tuesday there's sports, so the time is later. What I particularly like is that they set a time for doing their homework at the weekend. It is a common problem that students spend a lot of time notting at the weekend. It means they begin by thinking they'll do their homework on Friday night, but then it's the weekend and they want to take it easy, so they postpone it. And they think they'll do it on Saturday morning, but guess what? They sleep in as adolescents on Saturday morning, and then they have sports that afternoon, and they say, we'll do it on Sunday morning. But there are family events on Sunday. So they end up doing it on Sunday night, and it has been in their head the entire weekend. I much prefer that they settle on a specific time, and then they can feel the rest of the weekend is free time. I've also included subjects for revision in this timetable. Maybe after midterm in October, they will say, I'll be revising for the Christmas exams. So they allocate subjects to particular nights, and so will have revised all their subjects in the course of the week. These students do best if they have a good overview of the course and where this bit of information fits in. It helps them be more focused. It makes sense of what is to be learned and also makes for a better use of time. A revision master sheet for the exams can help with that also. Here I give an example of a revision master sheet. These students can feel overwhelmed and anxious about how much they need to know. They can feel it like a black cloud hanging over them with no idea about the size. This is an attempt to change that. Take a first year student coming back after midterm in November. 6 weeks to go to the Christmas exams. They ask all their teachers what is coming up in the exams. They have one sheet of paper and they list their subjects and what is coming up. Now that black cloud has been reduced and quantified. They know the size of the task ahead. They have an agenda. This reduces anxiety. When they sit down in the evening to study, it helps them be a lot more organised. They don't have to waste time. They have allocated subjects to particular nights. So if it's Monday, they will then study the next item on the science and Spanish list, and then they mark it off. And as the weeks pass and they see that they are making progress, it can lead to a dramatic reduction of anxiety. They see they will have covered their revision by the exams. The students on the workshop thought this was a brilliant idea. They weren't doing it, even though some of them were doing the Leaving Cert that year. The last idea on this page are SMART goals, making sure real learning is done rather than just reading over texts. Many students that I've known over the years, if they were asked to go over a chapter of the Reformation in history, what they do is they say, well, in this 30 minutes, I'll read over it 3 times. And at the end of that, the good readers would have a fair idea of what was in it. Poorer readers might have a hazier idea, but regardless, it fades quite quickly. What I much prefer they do is they set SMART goals. And SMART goals come from the jargon of being specific and measurable, achievable, realistic and time-based. But what it says is, in the same 30 minutes, I will go over this piece, and what I intend to know at the end of it is I intend to know 5 causes of the Reformation, 5 beliefs Luther had, and 5 facts about his life. And I'll test myself at the end. Now, that information will stay in the mind longer because it has been learned in such a structured way. If a student is disorganized, they should use the homework journal for taking down homework and packing their bag for the next day. The reason for that is at secondary, you can have a subject on a Monday and not again till a Thursday. And they might forget to bring in their books and more particularly the homework that they've done for that day. They could also put the subject names in the night before, because sometimes they might run out of time in class taking down the homework from the board, and this might save a few seconds. A key life strategy is that they would have a single diary for all their activities, whether they be sports, social or school deadlines. It might be their phone, or it could be a written diary or a wall chart. And then using colour is a great help being organised. Here I'm using colour in order that they would colour their timetable. And it could be that they would do 3 copies of this, and they'd have one in their work area at home, one in their locker and one in their homework journal. Now, they don't have to look at all the words in the timetable to know where they're going. The colour tells them. Also, when they put the name of the subject in for the first time, I'd encourage them to put the name of the teacher and ask the teacher to spell their name on the board, because very often they know teachers as Sir or Miss, and when they're asked to give the names to their parents for the parent-teacher meeting, they don't know your names. In a big school, I'd also encourage them to put the room number in. It can help. Now, yellow becomes the colour of maths, and they put a yellow tag on their maths copy, and brown is the colour of English. And then that saves them maybe 20 seconds every time they go to the locker, and they've got 20 copies in their locker and they have to find their maths copy or their English copy. As well as that, they will use a yellow folder for their maths notes, a brown folder for their English notes, etc. The disorganized student needs to develop a routine for filing and for being organized. So a weekly clear out of the bag and the locker and the work area helps. They could have a file for each subject. It could be a loose leaf binder with a label on the back in a different colour so they can identify it easily. They should have an index of notes in the front of it with the topics and the dates, and then they would file their notes by topic and date. They'd always file their notes flat, never folded, otherwise they have to go through mountains of notes to find the ones they want. And at the back, they could keep lists of keywords, spellings they find difficult, or definitions they need to know. In the webinar on how dyslexia can affect the student at second level, I talk about how dyslexia may affect them, and I list the following items that are here. And then in that webinar, I go on to talk about an exercise we did on the students' workshop. We would ask them how dyslexia affects them. They produce a list similar to this one, and then we would say, you've got 1 vote. Which is the one that caused you the most problems? And in over 90% of the workshops over those years, the same one came to the top of the list. If you've already watched the first video, you know the answer. In case you have not, just take a second and decide which one you think the students might have identified as the one that caused them the most difficulty. When I do this on in-service courses, it's only a minority of the teachers who identify the correct one. It was memory. Does that surprise you? The fact that memory was a key difficulty may be seen in the results of the WISC-5. The WISC-5 is often the test of cognitive ability that's used in the psychoeducational assessment. It has 5 key areas, along with subtests which I've listed here. Here are the scores of a girl I saw some years ago. Maria is not her name. The scores are percentile scores. With percentile scores, 50 is the average score. Scores above 50 are above average, and correspondingly those below 50 are below average. Her profile shows great strengths and weaknesses. Very often students with dyslexia would have a weakness in either working memory or processing, and she has a weakness in both. It might be the weaker scores in working memory that leads to students struggling to get information into long-term memory, and explains why so many of the students I came across listed it as a key difficulty. When students and those supporting them understand the profile of ability, they can use the strengths in the profile to help overcome the weaknesses. So now we are looking at memory and learning. These are students who need to learn in a consistent, planned, measured way. Cramming does not help. It can lead to feeling overwhelmed and anxious, and in some cases their minds can go blank. They learn with patterns and understanding. Rote learning for the likes of Shakespearean quotations, poetry quotations or science equations can be very challenging. They may know it the night before, but it becomes vaguer by the next day. Multisensory learning by using as many senses as possible can help. Some students learn by writing the material out. 2 of my lads learned by saying it aloud. That's what copper fastened it in their heads. Others may recite something and pace up and down at the same time. Access to good notes is key for memory. It saves them time making notes that would be useless because they're unclear and illegible, and they can use this time getting the key points into their memory. If they cannot make legible, clear notes, how do they get notes? Teachers may give them notes. This has happened more since COVID. Then a second way is what I did when my lads were in school and what I did for students in school as well, which was to photocopy the notes of a student who took good notes. This means that they have the means to learn the key points. Also, revision books are a great help, and I'd recommend them from first year and for fifth year. What I look for in a revision book is that they are more accessible with bullet points, numbering of points, less text, highlighting of key words and concepts, colour and diagram, bigger print, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and plenty of space on the page. There are plenty of websites around which have good notes on them. Some examples are here. Study Notes, which has notes across many subject areas. Lit Charts has study notes, and also what I like with Lit Charts, it's got modern English translations of Shakespearean plays. Spark Notes have study notes. Now they are UK based, and they also have videos of Shakespearean plays. The businessguys.ie have notes in the business subjects. Duolingo could be used for languages. The Conical Flask and the Science Teacher have notes on sciences. Here are some techniques that might help with memory. Mnemonics are a memory aid where a word or a sentence is made up of the key points. Examples: Fat Dad for the counties of Northern Ireland, or Holmes for the Great Lakes in the States. Another is Richard of York gave battle in vain for the colours of the rainbow. It prompts recall of information. Hooks for learning. This is a way that the student could use a strength to help them remember something that they have difficulty with. For example, I have difficulty remembering numbers. I transpose them very easily, and this includes my passwords for the bank. I have a good memory for historical dates, so all my passwords are historical dates. Some students find it exceptionally difficult to learn material off by heart. They can know it the night before, but by the next morning it is mixed up. So try to reduce the amount of rote learning for them. So many I've worked with over the years were doing higher level English and found the poetry and Shakespearean quotations exceptionally difficult. There was no way they would be able to recall all the ones the teachers had indicated. We worked together to reduce the list, maybe from 100 to 40. There was some chance they could remember the smaller amount. It is better that they remember these accurately than the 100 poorly. The student could make a list of key points they have particularly difficulty with, such as the spelling of names in history, of art or scientific equations. And this is what they would go over the morning of the exam, so they would be fresh in their mind. Grouping and visualization I'm going to deal with in the next slide. For some students with dyslexia, there is a limit to the amount of separate items they can remember easily. One way to handle this is to break it into groups. So if there are 10 items in a list, break it into 2 groups of 5. Here's an exercise I did on the Study Skills workshop with the students. I put this slide up and gave them a minute to remember as many as possible before I took the slide down. Then I asked them to count how many could they remember. The average was usually between 5 and 7. Then I did the same exercise with this list of 24 different items, but this time it was broken into 3 groups: the garden, the bathroom and the school, and their scores usually doubled. Breaking it into groups really helped. And then with the list we looked at other ways they could remember. One was to make up a mnemonic. Alright, so TTT SSSB for the bathroom. Another way, an important way, would be visualization, making a picture in the mind that would aid recall. For the first group, they could see the garden with the grass and the daffodils and the roses and the equipment lying on the grass. And these pictures would stay in the mind and make recall easier. Cogan and Flecker, in their book Dyslexia in Secondary School, suggest that when doing a poem or a short story, besides the key notes on it, one should do a series of pictures to show what happens in the text. And use of colour in the images would also help, such as if you're doing a diagram of the heart, using red to show the arteries coming away and blue for the ones going back to the heart. GoodNotes, mind maps, graphic organisers, where there are less words and the key points are clear, all help in learning and in writing answers. Here I'm mentioning two sites. One is Worksheet Works. I show a clip from that site. It has thousands of worksheets, millions of combinations, and you can customize them to what you want. It has English, geography, maths worksheets, and in the end, just at the end of the page, they have graphic organisers. I show the list of graphic organisers, and in a few seconds you can customize a graphic organiser to what you want. This is the PDST booklet on graphic organisers. The link is given. It has examples of graphic organisers like the ones I give here. I love the one on the digestion. The students loved the one on the comparative text. With this in mind, it's easy to see that they will be able to write a much better structured answer. It also has blank graphic organisers in that booklet. Mind maps, again, are a great way to reduce the verbal content and to help students visualise. However, I've often met students who have said mind maps don't work for them. This could stem from a lack of confidence in their ability to identify key points. They need training in making mind maps. The student may like the security of the text and don't have the confidence in their ability to reduce it down to key points, which should be about a quarter of the text. They lack the faith in their ability. So they might spend 30 minutes writing out the text again, and they believe that they are working, but it is of little help, particularly if it is difficult to read and it is lengthy. Many have never learned to do mind maps and feel they are of no use. They need help. I'm about to show you an exercise we did on the Study Skills workshop. Before I do that, I'm just showing you something from the Student Enrichment website. Student Enrichment give study courses in schools around Ireland. On their website, they have this example of taking notes 3 ways, and it encourages the students to think of which way would suit them best. I, for example, like the first to the second, but certainly not the third. Here's an example of a mind map with all the unnecessary words taken out. It summarises about 3 pages of the textbook. I have also put in a mnemonic at the top to give even more help. With this image in mind, it is possible to recall all the information and to write a well-structured answer, although I do think it could do with a bit of colour. On the Study Skills workshop, the exercise we did was as follows. We had a passage of about 300 words, and we worked with the students to reduce it to about 60. And then we asked them, which would you find easier to learn? And of course they saw the benefit of the reduction and would prefer the 60 words. Then we gave them a passage and advice on how to lay out the mind map and asked them to do one. This is just the piece of text we used for the mind map exercise. We provided them with the first step in laying out the information. Then we asked them to put in the points under each of the subheadings, and we said use abbreviations and leave out all unnecessary words. When they did that, we put the different mind maps up on the screen, and we asked the group to comment on each one of them. Constantly they saw the benefit of the clear, less wordy examples. They need exercises like this to do several times to gain confidence in doing a mind map. Flashcards are again a great help to help with memory. Students could make out their own flashcards. Study Stack and Quizlet allowed them to be done on the computer. Both have sets of flashcards already in existence, or the student or the teacher could make their own. Here you have a list that the teacher put in, and then on the other side you have the flashcards that help with learning. Oka Books is a company in the UK set up by the parents of a child with dyslexia who couldn't readily access the textbooks. They publish revision books and games in science, geography and French. I know it is the UK curriculum, but there would be some overlap. They also have board games in map reading and in the sciences. To help with memory, flipping it between the right and left sides of the brain might help. So things like putting it into your own words and explaining it to a friend, saying it aloud, turning thoughts into speech, links both sides and helps conceptualize the information. Tapes and videos and webcams can help. Do something physical. Some students pace or up and down as they learn, or do something visual. Do charts and diagrams, or have removable labels on diagrams and put the labels on in the correct place. Memory can be worked at to improve it. Some of these might help. The card game pairs, where cards are face downwards and you have to find the matching pairs, or a game of memory with 20 items in a box. Give the students 60 seconds to look at it, cover it up, and then see how many they remember, and then have a class discussion and ask the most successful students what method they used to remember the items. Was it linking them, or visualization, or rhyme, etc.? Or the brain box quizzes on topics such as football or science can help. Again, for many of the students with dyslexia, it involves overlearning, repetition, and hard work to get the information into long-term memory. Teachers could give help to show them how to lay out notes, and that they should include headings and dates. They should use colour, it makes it more memorable. For example, gendered words in French, where most words are female or male, you could use pink or blue highlighters. Bullet points help information stand out, and then you could number the points also, would be a trick for memory. Getting them to develop their own abbreviations for keywords, such as enviro for environmental, it saves time and space, and it makes it easier to remember. When doing diagrams, teach them to have the arrow pointing at the item, and then it should flatten and the word will be written on the flat piece. It means that all the words are easier to read as they are horizontal and not pointing at all sorts of angles. Here is the Cornell method of notes, which they recommend as it is the best way to make clear, memorable notes. You divide the page into 1/3 and 2/3. In the 2/3 you write the notes, in the 1/3 you write the keywords, and at the end you have a summary. The scanning pen could be a great help to students who find it difficult to make legible notes by handwriting. There are two versions of the scanning pen: the orange one, which is the exam pen, and it only reads, but the white one could be used to scan key points from a textbook and download those points to a computer later. That means they're making their notes without using handwriting. If handwriting is a difficulty, it can be very helpful for students to learn how to touch type. It allows them to make legible and clear notes. TTRS is a multisensory, structured online typing course. It is based on the phonics system Alpha to Omega. It is designed to help with reading and spelling and writing difficulties, dysgraphia, typing, literacy, memory, and it is available from the libraries. When taking notes in class, if they miss a word, they should just mark the space and then continue, rather than lose the train of what the teacher is saying. They can ask about the missing word later. They may need more time than others to take notes down from the board. Could they take a photograph? Some students say they cannot do two things at the one time. They cannot listen to the teacher to understand what is being said and also take notes. Is there a way that they could get the notes and just concentrate on what is being said so that they can understand the teacher? Sometimes students say they don't understand the point of revision, but revision plays a large part in memory. I'd make the point to them that the first time they learn something, it might take 20 minutes. But if they don't revise it, it begins to fade from memory. I give the example here that maybe you might only remember 25% a month later after you learnt it once. But if they revise that information, they can go over it in far less time to bring it back into their head, and they will remember more at the end of the month. And if they revise it again, the time needed to revise it is shorter, and they will remember more by the end of the month. This is why teachers give weekly and monthly tests. To finish up, I include this exam checklist I had for the students. The timetable should be in a prominent place, and it should be checked often to ensure they get to the right exams at the right time. They need to list what's needed for each exam, the equipment, etc., and have it out the night before. They go over the marking scheme of the paper and the time allocation, so they know how much time to give the different parts of different questions. They should go over the flashcards for difficult vocabulary or key facts they need to know the morning of the exam. When they go in, they skim the whole paper first, so they have a feel for it. And then when they begin to tackle questions, they always question the question. What is it asking me to do? So they don't write off the point. They always spend the minutes in planning their answers because it will help them write a better answer. And they should avoid summarizing the story or telling everything they know down. If they're running out of time, put a key point down, leave some space and put another one in. And then if you have time, you can come back and fill it in. Now I'm finishing up, and I hope you found some of the strategies and resources will be of use and to your students into the future. Thank you.